Well, there's been a lot of noise recently about falling voting rates among youth. Some, usually us young people, we like to claim that politicians and political parties don't advocate messages or agendas that really appeal to us. Others, often our parents and our parents' generation, claim that schools aren't teaching enough civics and that our society doesn't create political behavior in young people. And still others, often our grandparents' generation, like to claim that youth are just self-centered and lazy and likely undeserving of the right to vote anyway. It is these substantial differences that are leading to a miscommunication between youth and their engagement in politics. A few weeks ago, I heard a politician speak to a group of young people, and one of the things he said really stuck out to me. He said, young people are not voting and not getting interested in politics. It is those that do that will actually make the difference. Although I strongly disagree with this statement, from a narrow point of view, he is correct. Youth have the lowest voter turnout at about 37% for those under the age of 25. By this measure, we youth really don't participate or engage in politics. And we've all heard the insults against youth in politics, that youth are dropping out of politics, that we're eroding political behavior. I've even heard some go as far as to claim that this generation will bring the destruction of democracy. These charges are often harshly stated. And after hearing these criticisms, I did what any self-respecting, rebellious young person would do. I set out to prove them wrong. One of my first realizations was that voting isn't a particularly engaging form of participation. I mean, how exciting is it really to check off a ballot, fold it up, and put it in a box? Personally, I can think of a few things that I would rather be doing, and, dare I say, would probably have more impact. But don't get me wrong. Voting is a vital part of our society, and we really should all vote. But it is important to acknowledge that there are other, more engaging forms of participation. And it is this generation of connectedness, of ideas, of innovation, some of which we heard of today, that is leading this reinvention of politics. So, youth. Almost 60% of us engage in some form of non-voting political behavior. Compare that, though, to 38%, less than 38%, of those under the age of 50. Yet if we look at voting turnout, the stats are completely opposite. So what is it that we include in this non-voting political behavior? Things like political demonstrations, volunteering, social and internet media, or even using the marketplace as a form of political expression through boycotts or boycotts. The Occupy protests taking place in New York and around the world are a prime example of youth getting engaged. And in the last Canadian election, the federal election, not the one that took place yesterday, was characterized by flash mob videos with students across the country coming together to try and motivate youth participation in the election. But what really made this idea hit home for me was right here in BC during the petition to bring the HST to a referendum. A boy no older than 14 came to my door asking for signatures on the petition. He wasn't even tall enough for me to see through the door's window, nor would he have even been able to vote in the referendum. Outside of voting, our age group shows levels of participation greater than any other age category. These charges of political apathy among youth are using a very narrow definition of politics. This generation, my generation, our generation is not dropping out of politics, but shifting to new and different forms of participation. So why are we seeing participation change? Why are we seeing engagement change forms? Well, I mentioned one reason, that traditional measures of politics aren't particularly engaging, like voting. But more importantly, Youth and politics are constantly misinterpreting each other. It seems that for youth, politics has become synonymous with self-serving, narrow, partisan political behavior, and therefore of little interest to us. And there's also a failure in interpreting youth's activism and engagement back into traditional politics. When asked his opinion of the student flash mob videos made in the last Canadian election, Cabinet Minister John Baird said, "I'm not sure what a flash mob is, but it sounds a bit disconcerting. I don't know about flash or mobs, but I don't like the context of either word." For you and some university students and community organizers, Baird's comments made them chuckle. But it really underscored a wider problem in the last, and frankly, in all Canadian elections, this disconnect between politicians and the younger electorate. Dozens of projects have been implemented over the last 20 years to try and motivate youth to vote, but none have been successful. It was predicted that the last federal election, the one characterized by these flash mob videos, would finally reverse declining youth turnout. But it never happened, and the numbers were as low as ever. It is this lack of mutual understanding that plagues these attempts. If government were to broaden its definition of political involvement, we may see more youth engage in traditional measures of politics. For example, polling stations are in churches, community centers, and elementary school gyms. By a quick show of hands, how many have been in one of those in the last week? Okay. Not including voting yesterday, how many have been in one of those in the last week? A few. Now, imagine if they were on university campuses, in shopping malls, or even the local Starbucks. How many have been in one of those in the last week? A significantly higher number, as I suspected. Now, I'm not saying that we need to lease out every single coffee shop for the next Canadian election. But what I am trying to say is we need to re-examine how youth and politics understand each other. Feeling misunderstood or not catered to is no excuse not to make your voice heard. Things like the HST petition, the flash mob videos, and the Occupy protests are examples of youth using their engagement to try and make their voice heard. And the good news is that those who engage in some form of alternative political behavior tend to vote more often. So I implore you to get out there and boycott, protest, and volunteer. The important thing is making your voice heard. Because rather than being indifferent, youth engagement is merely different. Thank you.